This is going to be traumatizing, isn't it? Winter Burrow is a game where you play as a mouse who is attempting to rebuild his childhood home in the middle of winter. In this game, you'll have to manage your hunger, health, and warmth, all while helping woodland creatures and knit sweaters and forage for food and materials. This game is beautiful in many ways, from the hand-drawn art style to the character design and even the story the game is trying to convey. But before we get too far into what I mean about that, I wanted to talk a little bit about... This game was created by a small, 3-person dev team by the name of Pine Creek Games, located out in Denmark and published by Noodle Cake Studio. During the development, they pulled inspiration from games such as 7 Days to Die and Don't Starve, but wanting the game to be a more cozy survival rather than punishing by taking out the zombies and turning the difficulty down. Truth be told, they had many things to help inspire them during this process, from the book Mouseketeers to different survival games and even an endangered mouse species for the actual main character. Listening to the devs talk about this process, they made it very clear that they wanted you to feel like a tiny mouse in a big world, even if the world wasn't that big. Reasons like this is why whenever the game dropped originally, there wasn't a map implemented because they wanted you to get lost and have the feeling of wonder and excitement when exploring. However, the devs did listen to feedback and are adding things to the game that the community asked for, such as map. Now, truth be told, when I first heard survival craft cozy game, it didn't make much sense to me because in a survival craft game, you have to maintain your health and hunger along with other various stats, which can add a level of stress that, at least in my opinion, doesn't belong in a cozy game where you should be taking things at your own pace and not rushing things, and just enjoying the experience and also the time spent in the game. But somehow this tiny dev team managed to do it wonderfully. Now, how did they do that, you might ask? Well, I guess that leads us into... So, the game starts out with a quick but very sad intro, explaining that your parents had tried to make a home out in the woods, but after a short time of living there, they realized that for whatever reason, they needed to leave and live in the city. After arriving in the city, both your mom and pop started working in the mines to try and give you a good life. After a couple years of backbreaking work, they both tried to save up money to be able to move back into their burrow, but unfortunately, they were, how can I put this? Forcefully unsubscribed from life, we'll say. Luckily, with everything they left behind, you were able to buy a ticket to get back home, even if it was in the middle of winter. Upon arriving at your old home, you find it in shambles, and with you wearing city clothes not meant for winter, you need to get working quickly in order to make it livable and not freezing. While foraging for supplies, you really get an idea on how the survival part of this game is going to come into play. If you haven't gathered it by now, your biggest issue, ignoring your tragically small starting inventory, is going to be the cold, followed by your hunger. Now, if you're going into this thinking that it's going to be a difficult survival experience compared to something like Subnautica or Project Zomboid, you're going to be very disappointed. Don't get me wrong, it is a big part of the game, but during my 12+ hour playthrough, I never once died from exposure or starvation. To be fair, I didn't die in combat either, but that's besides the point. There are lots of ways to combat the cold, whether it be through food you eat, or maybe put down a campfire to sleep through the night, or maybe you stumble across another NPC who's trying to stay warm themselves. Not to mention you being able to go home and make warmer clothes, but that requires some foraging, and some of which can be kind of scarce, and even then it really only allows you to be out in the cold longer rather than completely fixing the problem. So in reality, it's more of a cold deterrent than a solution. Truth be told, when I was playing, I heavily relied on campfires and ground cookies. Anyways, foraging for food and resources isn't the only thing you'll be doing out in the world. I very briefly mentioned combat also. You will end up running into different insects. Some are just going about their business and will pay you no mind, while others choose violence if you're in even their general area code. Combat also felt very janky, but I think that's kind of the point. You aren't supposed to be some well-trained warrior or a hardened fighter. You're a tiny mouse just trying to survive, so no dodging, no rolling, no juking, no blocking. It just isn't something that's on the mouse's mind during a fight, and you get winded easily, all because you're out in the cold and you're hungry. Doesn't change the fact that the bugs want you as breakfast just like you want from them. Speaking of breakfast, I just gotta say, some of the meals you cook up in this game sounded really good, from blueberry pie to hazelnut cookies, and I guess some of it is really good. It made one of the NPCs straight up see his ancestors. Personally, I think that might have been a bit dramatic, but hey, I might be wrong. But anyways, I think that's really all I can say about gameplay. I say let's move on to... This is really where the cuteness overload comes into play with this game, along with a lot of sadness. From a toad who's going through parenting issues, to a squirrel who got kicked out of his troop for being just too forgetful, and even a mole who wants nothing more but to find his people. The stories you get from talking to the different characters in this world is truly heartbreaking. It's not overly often that I actually feel bad for a fictional character, but truth be told, every NPC I met I felt bad for, whether it be for one reason or another, and it made me as a person want to try and help them, and not just to try and move the story along, but I genuinely wanted to make their situation better, even for the main character, because I have to say, with everything that the little guy went through, I think I felt worst for him when the cold started to seep in. Now, I never like to spoil the main story for anybody who wants to actually play the game, and this game is no exception to that. However, what I will say is that everything is not doom and gloom, and there are some truly happy and heartwarming moments that made me actually smile. I'm not normally one for the sweet sappy stuff, but this game I was very much okay with it, and it never lasted longer than it should have. It said what it wanted to say, tugged on your heartstrings, and then let you go back to its beautifully hand-drawn world. So I guess that really leads me to my final question of what did I think of the game and would I recommend buying it? I really liked this game. Like I just said, it didn't linger for too long. I think the pacing was perfect, and in fact the only time I actually had issues was whenever I just decided to bash my head against an issue rather than going out and explore like I did for everything else. There are other aspects to this game that I didn't cover in this review either, such as the interior design and the gardening, and truth be told, that's only because I personally didn't take part in that other than for the required sections. The only reason for that is because I was so wrapped up in the story that I just wanted to see what happened next, or if one of the NPCs I just met was going to be okay. That takes some serious storytelling to pull me from building like that. In my opinion, this game has borderline mastercraft storytelling, and you can tell that this was a passion project rather than just a cash grab. This game was also insanely cute. I've mentioned this a couple times already, but I thought the art style was beautiful, and I 100% stand by that. And finally, would I recommend buying this game? I think it's very much worth a play. Now, I also don't think I would spend $20 on it. Case in point, I played this on Xbox Game Pass. However, not everybody has access to Game Pass, and I could 100% see this as something someone would play for a few weeks, or even just play it on a car or bus ride, and maybe not sit down and play it for 10 hours in one sitting like I did. So, I would buy it at your own discretion. It is priced at $20 across any platform it's available on, those being Steam or Nintendo eShop or Xbox if you don't have Game Pass. I also seem to be getting mixed results on if it's going to be on PlayStation, because if you Google it, it seems to think that it's already on PlayStation, but then if you search it up in the store, it's not there, at least for me. Same thing with Epic. So, you know, getting gaslit by Google is always a fun time. Anyways guys, as always, I've been Dingus, you've been you, this has been Burrow, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.